Major funding for these broadcasts has been provided by grants from New York Community Bank, Capital One Bank, Eastern Consolidated, M&T Bank, Sterling National Bank, Meridian Capital Group, Customers Bank, Aerial Property Advisors, Perfect Building Maintenance. Additional funding has been provided by AKA Hotels, Corman Communities, AmTrust Title Insurance Company, AVR Realty Company, Avison Young, Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, Bank Leumi USA, Briarwood Organization, CBRE, Chase Commercial Term Lending, Chase Mortgage Lending, Citizens Bank, Cohen Equities, Colliers International NYC, Collins Building Services, Connect One Bank, CPEX Real Estate Services, Dime Community Bank, Douglaston Development, Levine Builders, Flushing Bank, Friedman LLP, Genova Burns, Handro Properties, Handler Real Estate Organization, HAP Investments, Hodges Ward Elliott Inc., Investors Bank, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Center at Syracuse University, Kilroy Architectural Windows, Madison Realty Capital, Matone Group, Mercantile Bank, New Banks, Newmark Grubb Knight Frank, Optimum Window Manufacturing Corp., People's United Bank, Polsonelli, Rosewood Realty Services, SJP Properties, Stonehenge Partners, TD Bank, TerraCRG, the Knackle Group at Cushman & Wakefield, Maringoff Family Foundation, the Moynihan Group, and these friends.
New York City, it's a place where neighborhoods are emerging. So today, my guests are going to tell us what neighborhoods in New York are emerging areas for growth, development, real estate, and so on. My guests today include Mitch Rutter, who is the principal at Essex Capital, Daren Hornig, who is the principal at Hornig Capital Partners, Evan Petracca, who is an associate at Triangle Equities, and last but not least, the man who says to me, we don't have emerging neighborhoods. Everything is emerged. Ofer Cohen, the CEO and founder of TerraCRG. So you were saying there aren't emerging neighborhoods because New York City has emerged.
Yeah, my feeling is that in the last 5 years or maybe the last decade, the run-up in the market kind of took a lot of the opportunity. And I don't really think, at least from a Brooklyn perspective, I don't think there's like an unknown neighborhood.
See, for that reason, I purposely brought people who are developing in other boroughs, such as the Bronx, Staten Island. Is Staten Island emerging today?
Yes, I think Staten Island has to be considered emerging, being that there's been overall lack of investment in the area over the last several decades, and now with Irby, with our project Lighthouse Point, with the Wheel and Empire Outlets, you have over $1.2 billion of investment that's happening there, which should be a catalytic driver of growth over the next decade.
I hear you. I hear Daren, who's doing the Bronx, Brooklyn, parts of Queens, and so on. What's your thoughts about Staten Island?
There's a lot of traffic when I go through it all the time. Frankly,
that's good. It could help the retail.
But Staten Island is definitely there. I mean, it's more a single-family environment. From my knowledge, I'm definitely not a Staten Island developer. But I think when you look at the word emerging, we have to be careful in how we're defining the word emerging.
What do we consider emerging, or what do we consider maybe a changing neighborhood is perhaps a better terminology than emerging?
So I would say that it would be a neighborhood such as Ridgewood, but there are many examples, that embodies a phenomenon which I call the push and pull of the city. So you're saying that everything's emerged. And in Staten Island, I think the paradigm is different. You're creating the growth by a huge infusion of capital. But in neighborhoods in Brooklyn, Ridgewood, and Bushwick, what you have is people being pushed out of neighborhoods because rents have grown. So they're pushed into new neighborhoods, but then many of those neighborhoods exert their own attractiveness and begin to exert a pull on this type of renter. And that's who we go after.
Okay, so why has it taken so long for Ridgewood or parts of the Bronx over the last 10 decades? You know?
Well, I think, further to Mitch's point, if you look at emerging, if you look at why is land sold? Land is sold because it wants new development. When can you build new development? When market rate housing exists and people could afford to pay a rent. And that push and pull very much happened. You get pushed out of Manhattan, they got pushed into Williamsburg, they got pushed into Bushwick, and now they're being further pushed to Ridgewood, where that cost of land equates to the equilibrium of what a rent payer can afford to pay and what us as developers can pay.
So, yes, Ofer.
I think it's a good point. I mean, when you talk about land, and I appreciate the change to a changing neighborhood or a transforming neighborhood, because I do think that there's some parts of Brooklyn and the city that rents are still going to go up. And when it comes to land, there's only really, even Bushwick and Ridgewood is challenging to develop multifamily rental housing right now. There's only one part of Brooklyn.
But it's not only multifamily. Triangle Equities, I think it's about 10 years ago, went to part of Flatbush Avenue near Brooklyn College and built a property where you have Target upstairs and a lot of
Triangle Junction.
Triangle Junction. I mean, Brooklyn College had been a neighborhood. Then, because of the changes in the area, it became an area that was not really highly sought. Then you went in there with Triangle Junction, which is developed, because the neighborhoods, it's not only residential. We were talking before the show, and Daren brought it up. Long Island City today, you have all this construction, but you're lacking one major thing. There's not enough retail.
So part of that issue is because in Long Island City, it hadn't been an ingrained neighborhood before all of the development. In areas such as Ridgewood, more so than Bushwick, which had a lot of industrial, Ridgewood has a huge base of Polish and Ecuadorian immigrants. So the residential neighborhoods there, and all along Myrtle Avenue, you have, it's not the highest end retail, but you have solid retail that's slowly changing. So the millennials can now move into an already existing residential
Right, but retail is following the density. Right. So in Greenpoint, for example, there was always good neighborhood retail. But now that the density is coming through the towers on the waterfront, retail on places like Franklin and Manhattan Avenue are going to potentially double and triple in value. So, but let's back up a second, because I think we talk about land, we talk about commercial, we talk about residential. I think in some parts of the city, in some parts of Brooklyn specifically, the city took an active role in making an area transform or emerging or changing, right? And downtown Brooklyn is a great example, where suddenly there's all these densities, suddenly there's all these apartments, and now retail is going to follow, office is going to follow.
But downtown Brooklyn always had retail. It was a question of the type of retail.
But
correct.
It had density, though.
Right.
Density.
Downtown. To Ofer's point, retailers will follow density and follow demographics no matter where you are in the United States, right? The challenge with Long Island City is there was nothing there at all to begin with other than factories and warehouses, and now you have these residential buildings sprouting on the ground, and somebody wants to go for a beer, they want to go for a burger, or want to go shopping, and that size floor plate doesn't exist for a typical retailer. So I think you'll see the fill-in of the moms and pops, and you're starting to see that already along Queens Boulevard and Northern Boulevard. But the larger floor plates, you have to go further down Northern Boulevard to get the type of neighborhood amenities that typical.
You're doing things in the Bronx. Triangle's done a lot in the Bronx over the years.
Yeah.
Okay, a lot of them being smaller properties, more industrial type of properties through EDC and so on. What are you doing in the Bronx, and what do you see? I mean, today, if you pick up the New York Times, you pick up the other publications, they're talking about this dynamic boom in the Bronx.
Right.
How do you see it?
There's definitely a boom going on in the Bronx, but I think it comes back to what Mitch said, push and pull, right? By my background, I was a Manhattan office leasing broker. It's actually where I met Mitch, leasing in Manhattan. When I started buying about 15 years ago, I started to get priced out of Manhattan. So I was theoretically pushed out of Manhattan because of pricing and cap rates, and I started looking at Bronx, Queens, and then Brooklyn. You looked at the Bronx, it was a basis play. So we bought 2417 3rd Avenue, which is the Bruckner building, with my partner Savannah. That was all about basis. We bought it at about $150 a foot. And it had great bones, 12-foot ceilings, 22,000-foot floor plates, and great views of Manhattan with transportation nearby. Keith Rubenstein from Somerset and Chatreat are planning to build 1.8 million feet along the waterfront there. So I saw that as definitely emerging, right? We were making a market. We invested $10 million in the building and made it a cool, hip, tech-oriented building. And that's where I think the opportunities can come. Frankly, it's not coming as fast as we thought because the demand isn't there yet. But I think over time, people will want to go to those markets.
Let's follow the demand situation in Brooklyn, okay, because that's office market that you're talking about.
Correct.
There are a number of buildings under development today in Brooklyn for office, in addition to downtown Brooklyn. I mean, yes. The question is, if they build it, will they come in Williamsburg?
3 or 4 years ago, we were sitting here, and the idea of a tech media, tenant coming to Brooklyn was kind of a dream, and everybody said, well, I'm going to be the first building that provide all these amenities and a Class A tech building in Brooklyn. I'm going to attract these tenants. Now, about 12 months away from all these buildings being delivered, and everybody's waiting for the announcement of the first tech tenant coming to Brooklyn. And I can tell you that when we look at the office leasing market in Brooklyn, we see a lot of density and a lot of depth in the market between the 2,000 square feet tenant and 15,000 square feet tenant, and a lot less so when it comes to 25,000, 50,000 and up, and especially in what we call emerging office markets. But it's in any market, in Dumbo as well, in downtown Brooklyn as well. It's always easier, faster to lease, broken up space.
6 or 7 years ago, when the late Glenn Markman was on my show, you could go to Metrotech and pay $18 a foot. I mean, it was a different world. Today, Metrotech's $50 a foot. When Mitch built on Schermerhorn, which is 7 years ago?
About 7 years.
7 years ago, people weren't expecting Schermerhorn to be rationalizing rents of $60 a square foot. I mean, the market changes. So here, people always ask me, walking on the street or something else, where is the opportunity? Daren brings out the point of the Bruckner building, on Mott Haven in the water. Okay? We have water in certain markets. Staten Island is one of the opportunities on the market, and you're building some office over there in Staten Island. You still have great opportunity with regard to the Coney Island, Flatbush, Sheepshead Bay, East New York area in Brooklyn. Okay?
Anything
that area,
south of the
some
park,
of that market has always had industrial. I mean, East New York had a large industrial. That's where the Recklers came out with the initial property. So when somebody's looking over there, transportation is getting better with ferries and so on. What do you see?
The landmark in Brooklyn is kind of interesting because after a run-up of about 5 years, a year and a half ago, just like the rest of the city, the land market kind of stalled. Somewhat because of the 421A being on hold, somewhat because of a lot of inventory of product that's coming online, and people were quite busy. What we're seeing now is people coming back into the land market is opportunity in south of the park, south of Prospect Park, so that the closer you are to the park, and going down all the way down to the water in Sheepshead Bay and Coney Island. But the most opportunity we're seeing on the belt that's closer to the park, because this is where you see land trading between $125 and just sub of $200 a foot, which still under the new 421A or affordable New York, you could still make a multifamily rental project work. I don't, and then the condo market has been doing really well, but the condo market is a flight to quality kind of play right now. So people are going to develop in the best part of the best neighborhood, a small boutique project. But there's not that much scale there.
So some of the challenges in today's market is construction costs really haven't budged. Even though land sales have been stagnant, pricing has gone up. It hasn't really fallen. which is an economic anomaly, right? Usually if demand drops, pricing will drop with it. That hasn't changed.
They're talking about price of land and price of construction.
Right. So it's making it more difficult, and brokers such as Ofer have been doing a very good job educating sellers of where that margin needs to be for a developer to buy. So if I want to buy at a 6 cap or a 7 cap, he knows the numbers, I know the numbers, and it's just priced very thin. That your execution has to be flawless to even make a profit. So it's not like the old days when we've been
There's
around.
another component to it is construction financing.
Right.
Is much more cautious in the last 12 to 18 months.
There's still some available for rental properties,
Right.
but not for the condo.
But that kind of financing is more picky about locations
You know what,
and scale. And
just before the show, one of the team of CUNY TV asked me, he said, look, my wife and I grew up in East Harlem. We have a child. We want to find an affordable condominium. So I sit there and I'm saying to my mind, couldn't the Bronx or even parts of Ridgewood or Bushwick or Sunnyside be the place, because people want to own. People still have the ownership involvement, okay? That's part of the opportunities even in Staten Island for the people. The ownership opportunity, people want to have that type of property. So where could you make it affordable as a developer?
So the problem, as Daren noted, is the land prices haven't adjusted downward yet enough. So in Ridgewood, we're in it on our site at south, believe it or not, of $100 a foot. Land around the corner sold recently for $230 a foot. So nothing can work but a condo. There's no comps for condominiums in Ridgewood. Exactly. But we believe if you produced a nice product that would sell at $750 a foot, we think, because you're a block from the L and the M, it would be gobbled up.
In essence, aren't we talking what we've seen in certain parts of Harlem? Okay, Harlem today, I'll give you an example. My colleagues did a construction loan on a property that I never thought would do well on 104th and Park Avenue. On the train station, on the train and next to the projects. The development is 70% pre-sold at $1,100 a foot. So,
I think in these emerging neighborhoods, I think the affordability.
Emerging now.
The affordability, well, as a condo market, an emerging condo markets, I think the affordability is not on a price per square foot like the developers and the brokers are looking at it, but rather on a pricing point. So if you can deliver a one bedroom in Brooklyn between $400,000 and $600,000, $700,000 for first-time buyers, you're going to do really well, regardless if it's $900
they'll all
a
be
foot.
sold.
Right. And they are selling.
The problem is convincing the construction lender that
That's
you'll get
right.
it.
And
So it has to underwrite as a rental first.
So the developers that we're seeing active in that market are not using institutional construction financing. They're using private capital.
I mean, a number of the properties right near Evans property, Lighthouse Point in Staten Island, prior to the last recession, in like 2004, 2005, a number of developers were building condos in Staten Island, close to the water or...
And a lot of those properties, and this gets to the basis discussion, were existing buildings that were retrofitted into being condos where they could get in an attractive dollar amount where they could make $600 a foot in sales, work out to make a profit. I mean, I don't know how ultimately successful they ended up being.
Unfortunately, some of them got hit by the 2008, 2009, and someone else's misfortune became someone else's fortune buying the property over there.
But all things being equal, I'll speak for myself. As a developer, I'd much rather develop multifamily than condo any day of the week.
Sure,
the only time
tax benefits and so on.
Well, also the recurring income.
The recurring income, tax benefits, you're forced to build condo because land prices dictate that you can't equate rental income to what you could afford to pay.
If people are living in a certain neighborhood, which we're seeing, in downtown Brooklyn, there's a lack of office space over there. There's a discussion, there's a lack of office space in Williamsburg. Is there a lack of office space perhaps in the Ridgewood, Bushwick neighborhoods?
I hope so.
Right. Daren is doing a few commercial jobs there. We're not. I think that he'll do well from an absorption point of view. He can speak to that.
So
but
who
I
are the
think
tenants going to be in your property?
I think that there's you don't want to have too much supply right now in an
Right.
unproven market.
So we bought a warehouse building. It was an old box factory that we renamed the Box Factory. Quite original.
I like that.
It's catchy, right? It's 67,000 feet. It has 18-foot ceilings. It's a wood joist building. So, it's cool. It's techy. And Ofer and Mitch have both seen it. It speaks to that tech and creative type user, the artist. And that artist community has been pushed out of everywhere.
Right, they've been priced out of the market, correct.
Out of Chelsea, out of Soho, out of Meatpacking, out of Williamsburg. You go down, and this just continues on the L, so it's off the Halsey stop of the L. So I think if we wanted to go the route of small to medium-sized tenants, 1,000 to 5,000 feet, I think that gets absorbed pretty quickly. Right now, we're thankfully in discussions with a few users who want either half the building or the whole building. Once again, because that product just doesn't exist. If you are a 40,000-foot user that wants to be in that area, you have no choice. There's very, very few, because people just haven't built that over time. Our business plan was small to medium size, and that's where I think it may ultimately, go out. But pricing is still good. Pricing is in the 30s a foot.
When you're talking about trends and emerging, two trends are taking place in the real estate market. One is the co-living and the co-working. You're involved with the co-working space in Staten Island.
So we have Regis as one of our anchor tenants at Lighthouse Point. They're going to be doing a spaces concept, which is kind of like the WeWork with more of a tech vibe. I think it has a place there because there's a lot of people that are currently hopping on a ferry and going into Manhattan. So perhaps they can not take the ferry anymore and work there and on a small amount of space. It makes sense for them. Co-living is something, I don't necessarily believe in. I think that, when you're 25 years old, you want to have your own place to be. You kind of get over the living with roommates in a dorm when you're in college, but that's just my personal
I think that the co-working obviously has a tremendous place in the world. I mean, the co-working, the co-living, I think, is a beginning of emergence, and it's going to continue to transform as more developers are kind of playing with the idea. I think that the millennial demographic or younger demographics moving into this neighborhood and trying to create a life are craving for some kind of a community-based center that they don't have anymore in other parts of their life. And they may or may not find it in their building.
So we've specifically rejected the co-living. We're building efficient small units that can be shared with a lot of community facilities, business centers and community rooms and ping pong tables and pool tables, but we're not at the point, and I don't want to wind up with an obsolete building. When we started Ridgewood, a firm came to us and offered to net lease the whole building if at a crazy number if we built it to their specs. And it's not the business I'm in, but beyond that, if it failed, they weren't credit. You wind up with a building that's not usable, just rabbit warrens. I think that it's much more adaptable to have efficient units that can either be rented by an individual or shared.
Which is basically the co-living concept with two people or three people sharing an apartment.
With a kitchen in the...
Right,
yeah, that's right. Same thing, that's right.
It's funny. I think the exact opposite. I think co-working is not going to be here for very long, right? Scott Reckler and John Halper and two partners of mine bought HQ, remember that, 15 years ago? And they were trying to merge with Regis. The recession of 2001, they went from 90% occupancy to 50% occupancy in 6 months. Why? Because there were no leases and these people have liquidity. Now, you could work in Starbucks, you could work in the gym, you could work in Central Park with Wi-Fi and be almost as productive. So once there is a hiccup in this economy, with all the supply out there from co-working, these millennials are going to be like, I'm not spending $1,500 a month for 20 square feet to sit in a room and think I'm cool.
There's a program called Spacious, which is available in 9 restaurants currently in New York City, where you can have the co-working environment for $95 a month, and you can, because the restaurant only opens up at night, so they're open from 9 in the morning to 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And you have all the opportunities, which relates to exactly your point.
With my
and
iPhone,
Staples just came out with the same program up in Boston called Branded, because their stores were too large and people can work on the workstation.
You could work anywhere right now, right? You don't need to be in an environment spending $1,800 a month.
That's your point on co-working.
Right.
What about co-living?
So co-living, it's going to have its place, right? You have senior living, you have assisted living, you have luxury, you have no-frills hotels, you have luxury hotels. It will have its place, but it's not for anyone and everyone, right? I would never build a building because I think that's too specific. But I think this co-living environment will continue to play out because this is what millennials want. They graduate college, they're in these cool dorms, right? I was in this varsity dorm in Wisconsin where my nephew is living. It feels like a cool health club.
You bring up the term, it's the millennials. It's up to a certain age, okay?
Yeah, but the millennials
there's
are
always gonna
already
be millennials.
having starting families and having babies. So millennials are also graduating from the dorm life.
Right. Well, I'm saying millennials today, Michael, it's going to be that next 21-year-old. There's always going to be 21-year-olds who want to live somewhere that's cool and fun, and they're accustomed to an environment living with their roommates.
I didn't hear any comment about co-living and co-working.
Well, I think that I understand what you're saying about potentially there may be too much supply on the co-working side, but I think co-working serves a purpose as an alternative to an office space. It doesn't, where we see the market in office from an office leasing perspective, people are giving up their 1,500 square feet office for two guys, and they're getting two memberships at WeWork. They're getting more value out of WeWork than a 1,500. So I don't think that the WeWork model or the co-working model is to get you out of your studio apartment in Ridgewood and go to WeWork to work. It's rather to kind of have a much more amenitized.
But some of the co-living space, I remember I had the guys from comment on, the biggest expense they had was the T1 lines for the Wi-Fi, okay, because the people stay in the apartments all the time.
Right, that's right.
And they use that level.
Listen, co-living is an experience, is a lifestyle, but it doesn't mean that the developer needs to curate every aspect of someone's life just because they're developing a building. So it's time's going to tell, how far with that model we can go.
So in summation, it sounds like, as opposed to emerging, there are a lot of trends taking place, okay, and different markets all over the city, and there are opportunities, could be in the Bronx, could be in Brooklyn, it could be in Queens. I know you don't know what Queens is because you just limit your car to go through Brooklyn or even Staten Island. And I'd say if we did the show in 6 months, we'll find additional neighborhoods, and then we'll have a better idea of how you do in your rentals over there in the Bronx and in Queens. And I'd like to thank Mitch, Daren, Evan, and Ofer, and I'll see you next week.